Hello, everybody. My name is Mike Meyer. I'm the Senior Manager of Corporate Engineering, Foursquare. My talk is no news is good news, but hey, what if you got the news? AI-powered monitoring for fleet MDM enrollments. Hopefully this won't be too scary, like job security, but let's get started. Do want to talk about myself just for a few moments. Contrary to popular belief, I am not this Michael Myers, nor am I this funny Canadian who's topically dressed like Elon at the moment. I did used to be this guy, a beardless, hairless audio engineer, clearly turning the tracks up to 11 on this hot mix. That's my 11 tie-in. Yes, and I did used to play in bands, so Spinal Tap is huge in my world. But really, I'm an engineering and technical lead at Foursquare. I've been there for about 6 years now. I've got a knack for identity, device management, integrations, and automations. But I kind of have a sort of not too terribly unhealthy obsession with IT and the human experience, how those two kind of interact. Well, once upon a time, and you've probably said this to yourselves, no news is good news, right? You do some things like pushing out a migration or implementing a new service. If everything works, you rarely hear about it sometimes. And I actually looked back through an old YouTube video from last year from a guy who was talking about an MDM migration. I was super happy that he got like tons of, this was so great, this was so awesome. That's excellent when that happens. And of course, when something breaks, everyone knows. Everyone knows. Scenario at Foursquare. This is kind of the introduction into the problem here. Thanks for a great run, Jamf. We decided to show up and migrate to Fleet. So it's MDM migration time. We've got to migrate policies, scripts, settings, a whole slew of things. And if anyone is curious about this migration, you are more than welcome to come ask me about it. I will tell you the stories of yesteryear, now that Apple has given us an easy button in Apple Business Manager to get stuff like this done. So I can tell you some tales of how we did it long times ago. Along with this scenario, we had to migrate an important piece, zero-touch enrollment, right? Jamf and Fleet sort of call policies and do things in different ways, and so we had to re-architecture our zero-touch enrollment sort of process, okay? Not too big of a deal. We did all of our testing, we did all of our things, but, we did run into a few hiccups post this. This was back in November, December of this last year. Luckily, we weren't hiring a whole lot during that time just because it's the holidays, so it was onesie twosies. Oh, this script didn't, was timed out, or some sort of random installation went awry, okay? But these things are sort of difficult to monitor in real time, right? Our onboarding classes, typically at the beginning of a week, happen on a Monday morning, and we actually send directions to our new employees to set up their computers whenever they want. So you don't know if this enrollment is happening at 9 a.m., 11 a.m., 3 p.m., midnight, because you don't know where that employee is when they're pushing that power button, okay? So yes, this then sort of led to less than ideal onboarding experiences. We have to go back, track down the user, hey, what went wrong? Let's fix it out with you, let's do some things. And so I said, well, there's gotta be a way that we can sort of watch these things happen, or at least like have a record of it when it's happening in real time, okay? So this really cool robot came to me, AI, and said, hey, I think I'm good for the job, okay? I'm available 24/7. I can do this for you. I can be paged or alerted at a moment's notice, right? It's ChatGPT's at your keys. All these AI tools are ready for you, okay? Then you can teach me what you would do when you're gonna monitor these enrollments, and I'll do it for you. And I said, you got a job. You're hired. We'll hire you part-time for right now. We're not gonna go full-time. We'll give you kind of a trial here. So me and this new part-time employee sort of sketched out what its job was gonna be. And that first napkin sketch was in a platform called Zapier, which we had some access to, and I knew that they had sort of an agents product, excuse me. The basic gist is you can insert a bunch of instructions, give it some tools to work with. And the tools that you can see in this example are the webhooks. And we'll do a little bit of a close-up there. There we go. Hey, so when you get like a notification that a serial number has enrolled, go look up the ID of that serial number in our endpoint fleet, okay? And then at the time that I was building this, I said, well, why don't we just go back to our observability tool and look through the logs for that ID number and figure out what happened in that span of time, okay? So this is basically his marching orders, okay? So here was a test, okay? Go do it. Well, yeah, I found the ID with serial number. Sorry, I redacted some of these things. Found 2 script executions in the observability logs. Okay, that script ran, both were initiated by Fleet, all the things worked. Great. Okay, well, the day that I was showing this to my team, one of the engineers on my team looked at me and said, well, this is great, but I am really not in love with the way that you stored those API keys in there. And I went, good point. So on the call I was lamenting, I was like, man, I wish AWS had a service that was like this, right? Something that I could securely store API keys in. So literally that same day in February, our CTO got on Slack and said, hey, we've got a bunch of extra credits to go use this product, Amazon Bedrock. Does anybody want to try it out? I do. Here's the advantages. Secure secrets management. This is the thing that really hooked me, which was modular collaborative architecture. So you're telling me I can have more than one of these doing a single task, and then I can have one guy at the top, like a manager or a supervisor, who's actually coordinating all this? I'm in. Sign me up. And instead of those tools that we were inserting into the dialogue with Zapier, we're going to use lambdas to do it. Okay? So here's the big picture, sort of where we're going to go with this. We've got an enrollment detection, and at Foursquare, we pipe our fleet activity logs all through an observability platform. We can scan for when enrollments happen and set a monitor or alert for that. So we're going to send the alert over to AWS, to all this agent hive, right? And then, just for fun, just send me updates in Slack. Just let me know when these things are happening, okay? These are sort of the key things that you might want to know how to use to do these things. Webhooks, we're passing those through an API gateway in AWS. Lambdas, the agents, more lambdas to call Fleet APIs for tools. And then just how to get messages into Slack via like a bot or whatever. There is the red box for Terraform, because we do use Terraform at Foursquare. I'll just mention that briefly. A lot of the other Terraform stuff is out of scope of this talk, but all of the Bedrock agent tools and things and modules are all available via the Terraform currently, but it is buggy. And if you want to know more about the bugs, come talk to me later. So this is sort of the architecture here. This is just sort of a plain Jane architecture. I got a supervisor at the top and then 5 agents. These 5 agents are each going to have a single role in this particular workflow. One's just going to get the fleet IDs from the fleet endpoint. We've got another agent here who's going to read host activity. I swapped this out with the observability. Don't go look in the logs, because that's like a time delay. There's too much time being lost there. Fleet has this really great endpoint that will allow you to look up activities that happened on a host and that are going to happen on a host. So you can collect that in. With that host activity, you actually can see, this script ran, and it will actually spit out a script execution ID. So now I can take that execution ID and pass it into this bot who's going to look up, check script results. Okay. We've got a 4th one for time, and I'll talk about time later. And then a 5th one, which is actually the one that's just going to write messages to Slack. That's its only job. Just tell me what's going on. Supervisor at the top. Let's talk about the guts of Bedrock agents. Okay, they're modular, autonomous, AI powered. The brain. Okay, this comes in the form of a foundation model. Okay, Bedrock agents have the ability to hook into a wide range of foundation models that are enabled by AWS. So You get access to the Titan models through Amazon. You get access to the Anthropic models. You get access to all the meta models. You basically hook it up to whatever you want and you let it sing. Handles all of your prompts. It figures out what's going on. Next, you have to give it instructions, okay? It's a little bit different than a prompt, and Wes kind of talked a little bit about this earlier. You kind of want to teach it, like, what's your job? What is your role here to do? Being very specific is better than not. Then we have to give it tools, right? Those tools can be lambdas. We're going to define the parameters for which it should run, and then those things can be securely scoped. They're modular. Yeah, it's pretty great. Okay, so we're going to hone in just on this. Just get me numbers, right? We're going to teach you to do something. This is the agent builder in AWS. You can see it's got a name. We've assigned the Claude model to this particular agent. Amazon actually, when you go through sort of this process, they recommend to you optimize models for this particular agent product. And the optimization kind of boils down to latency. Okay, so other models have way more latency than others. So they kind of say, well, of the ones that you have enabled for your tenant, these are the ones that you should probably use for this function. Okay, this was just an arbitrary choice based upon their recommendation. Okay, now I've got some instructions. Okay, you're a bot. You can go look up and find host ID numbers from Fleet when you get a serial number. Okay, so now that we've got sort of that in place, let's talk about action groups, which enables the tools. Okay. What you don't see in this screenshot a little bit further up, because I didn't really think it was relevant, is that this agent is attached to a lambda. And that lambda written in Python will go out to the Fleet endpoint that looks up these Fleet IDs and return it. Okay? But we're going to specify that that function has a name, Fleet ID lookup. And then we need to pass some parameters, just like we maybe would in a regular sort of Python call. Okay? So that the parameter is going to be a serial number. You tell the agent, this is what you need to do this job and get this return, okay? And we make sure it's required, okay? You can't run this lambda if you don't have a serial number at all, okay? Here's sort of an excerpt from that sample. So it's kind of, a continuation of what you just saw. The Fleet IDs being called, passing in the serial number, and then construct the call, run it, and return, okay? Now, this endpoint, it's worth pointing out, I don't know if the Fleet guys are actually in the room at the moment, but this endpoint actually returns more than just a host ID. So further on in this code, I've just written a simple filter to snatch the host ID, okay? So it's the agent now. We've got all the parts and pieces, foundational model, now has a tool it can use when it thinks it's necessary, not when I tell it, okay? I gave it instructions, it's got a job to do. Now I just need to replicate, right? So with the read host activity, I put in the endpoint for the read host activity. And what does that particular endpoint need? It needs a host ID, right? So that, you can see how now these start to chain together as far as like, you need to get information from the agent that gets host IDs in order to get read host activity, et cetera, okay? So now we need to like enable the hive of agents. And we're going to talk about the supervisor right at the top. I know you guys are dying to know about time, but we'll get to that in a second. Supervisor agent. He connects to the other agents. He can call them whenever he wants. He invokes action autonomously and steers direction of the entire workflow. Okay. This is the builder for the supervisor agent. You can see the different ones at the bottom here that I've started to enable on this supervisor. And just a little detail on the one that we were just talking about, the host ID one. We've basically set it up to select the current version of that agent. We actually have to give the collaborator a name, which when I was building this, I was like, well, this is the first of its kind, so let's not use a naming convention just yet. I'll just call him by real names. So this guy's Francis, okay? You actually have to write a collaborator instruction, so you say Francis can provide you with the ID numbers, okay? That's all the only things that this supervisor knows about that other agent, okay? So he can go to Francis and say, hey, I got the serial number, can you get me the ID? Francis, runs over, pings Fleet endpoint, gets the ID number, returns it to the supervisor, okay? So here is the real glue, and again, like Wes kind of alluded to this in the Goose talk, you really, really, really need to be very specific about what this agent needs to do. We need to check for policy execution, app installs. At the time that we sort of built the first iteration of this, we kind of devised 13 different things that it needed to look for Friday the 13th. Because I made this slide before I realized it was Friday the 13th. And make sure it's defined in very, very, very good detail. But there's this other sort of ingredient that happens during zero-touch enrollment, and that's sort of this concept of time, right? When the user presses the button on their laptop to like finally getting to the point where they can log in and start doing work, that's a certain amount of time that has to happen. This now acts as a success criteria, okay? So if this enrollment process doesn't happen within a certain amount of time, it's technically a failure, or could be, right? There could be something else going on. So we've sort of pegged it at 20 minutes, just to be safe, okay? Well, here's the problem. Agents don't have a concept of time. If you go to ChatGPT and say, what time is it? It will make it up. It'll be like, it's 10 o'clock. I don't know. I don't know how to reach on the internet at all, okay? So remember that fourth agent that we had in the stack there? Let's create a Lambda. Go tell me what time it is. And then calculate elapsed time, because we're going to need to know how much time has passed. And then occasionally we'll need to start a timer, 60-second timer. Because when I was testing this early on, I saw moments where, like, I don't know, Google Chrome was installing or some other big package. There's this large amount of time where there's no activity happening. Sometimes the agent would go, I think everything's done. I'll just stop randomly. It's sort of a weird hallucination. So I devised a timer that it can access and set off so that it can wake itself back up and keep going, okay? And then of course we've got, when you are doing all of this stuff, message me in Slack, okay? Last part of the puzzle here, invoking the agent. This is at the API gateway. If you remember, we're sending a webhook over, and it's setting all of these pieces into motion, okay? The IDs of the agent are all values that you get from the console, or if you're using Terraform, you can get those from output. The session ID is kind of the important ingredient here. Session ID dictates memory for these guys, okay? So in this particular instance, if we're sending out laptops and we get one back, and then we send it out again very soon, that agent might look back in its session history and say, oh, I've seen this serial number before, it's fine. I don't need to go monitor anything. So earlier in this Lambda, we have a function that will randomize the session ID so that we make sure that the agent session is random every single time, okay? This is gonna come in handy down the road. The input text or the prompt is what's coming from our webhook and the observe platform, okay? So here's the end result. Our employee is named Echo. And this is the result of 3 different Slack messages that happened just under 10 minutes. And we've got 13 policies. We were all very surprised when it provided progress bars. In fact, one of my engineers turned to me and went, progress bars? What? The Slack author that we have that's a bot does write things differently each time, a little bit each time. Sometimes it's more consistent, sometimes it's not. But it's pretty magical to see this happen. So this was a successful enrollment, okay? Here's one that didn't work, right? And I think what we did is we enrolled it and then we just quickly pulled the plug on the internet. So nothing happened. It's really interesting to see how it escalated each time. And at the end it's like, bro, you gotta see what's going on here. There's something wrong, okay? And it's a good thing I didn't tell the Slack author to use tags like @channel or here or whatever, otherwise it'd get really noisy, really quick, okay? Yeah. The other cool part that I wanna show you is the back end, okay? So these are logs being dumped into CloudWatch. They're model invocation logs. And you can see the cool one that you can see is the one right in the middle where it says it's thinking. Okay, this serial number is enrolled. I'll begin monitoring the enrollment process. Dun, 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 dun. First, I need to send an initial message to Sydney, who's I dubbed as the Slack author. That's Sydney, okay, if you haven't met her yet, to start monitoring, and then they send a message to Slack. This grows over time, and you get to see the interaction between these agents doing the thing. It's very magical. This works so well that I thought, you know what? You earned a promotion. Good job. Job well done. Let's promote you to an interactive Slack bot. Let's talk to you. Let's actually ask questions and get stuff in return. Here's what this looks like. Tell me the ID of the serial number. Here you go. Who does this belong to? We added in the fleet endpoint that shows you human device mapping, okay, for this, which was kind of fun. The little emojis that you see underneath my messages is basically just a stopgap because bots can't write the echo is typing thing that you see when you're in Slack. So that was a way for me to sort of visually say, oh, okay, it's working, okay? This is all hitting an API gateway endpoint with a Lambda that's triggering this. Here's some more dialogue. Tell me the last 5 activities, right? We've got that activity agent that can look that stuff up for echo, right? Here's all the things. Oh, and I say, if there's any script, tell me the results. Well, there was no scripts. Well, okay, look back further. Tell me the last 7. And if there's any scripts, tell me the results. Oh yeah, here you go. And there's a few at the end. Great, thanks, Echo. The cool thing about this kind of goes back to how we invoke this guy. The session ID, right? We're talking about memory. In this particular instance, it's hitting a completely separate Lambda, and I capture if it's a DM or a message in a channel. I also capture who the user is that messaged. We write that to a table, and then if there's no session ID that exists for that conversation with that user or in that channel, we log it, we generate a new one and log it in a database, in AWS. So when this gets called again, when you message it again, it looks up in that database to see, was that Mike Meyer that DM'd me again? Oh, if it is, his session ID is this, because I see it in the table. So it retains history when I'm talking to it. The channel history is cool because it then doesn't matter who's talking to it. It just knows the session or the memory that I have is associated with this channel, okay? So anybody can talk to it in the same sort of context of things. It's wild. So what's next for this? Whew. Well, there's an opportunity to consolidate agent functions. So you kind of saw the functions there in the tool groups with the lambdas. You can only have one lambda attached to these agents, but you can have different functions, okay? So the example with the host ID fleet endpoint thing, I mentioned earlier that it returns a lot of extra information like Mac OS version or another data point, whatever model ID, right? You could have host ID lookup, you could have OS version, and you could have another one all hitting the same endpoint, but just filtering different information for that one specific agent, okay? MCP server functionality, maybe? I don't know. It's so bleeding edge right now. But what I do know is being able to incorporate this would save me a lot of time coding all this stuff myself, which actually GitHub Copilot helped me do a lot of this. Anyway, so maybe. There's definitely an opportunity to iterate on prompts and instructions. Like, code is one thing, but being able to nail down a prompt or instruction for these guys is like the bread and butter right here. You got to be able to sort of like really tuck that in. And then iterate on the success criteria, right? We had 13 things and time, but there's other things. Is the disk encrypted? Did the endpoint security software load itself? I mean, there's a whole multitude of things that we could add in here for success criteria that it could, take account for. I think there's an opportunity there. And then what else can we use this on? He's got a part-time job. I gave him a promotion. Like, what's next for this guy? He's up and coming. I really think there's a lot of opportunity here with this. This is such a weird sort of niche small example, but hopefully it's going to spark some ideas about how to use AI tools like this to do the stuff that I don't really want to do. I don't want to wait around until 9 o'clock in the morning and make sure somebody's laptop enrolled correctly. I think it's an interesting new space. That's me. Come find me. I love talking to people, and I will talk about anything and everything in this talk or otherwise. Thanks. Oh no. The security guy. I knew it.
Gil? When are you giving it right access to anything?
I was thinking about that at lunchtime because our team is very much of the opinion that all of this stuff is great on read, but write access is way out there. There's no way I would do that anytime soon at all. But you want to get information and get a summary. This is it. Yeah. Oh yeah, right here, there.
Yeah, I guess this ties into giving right access. So I think with an issue with using AI is that it can make things up. So I guess my concern I have with these sorts of things, or I guess a thing to keep track of, or I don't know what your thoughts are, how you handled this, is if you have this service going on and it's reading these things and it's got these instructions, which seem pretty small and targeted, but there's still the chance that
Yes.
1 time out of 100 it just says here's
Something
something crazy.
Yeah.
The serial number is blue. I don't know. So
Yeah.
so I don't know how you. What are your thoughts on how to handle that and work around that sort of thing?
We test and verify. I've run this. The guys on my team are probably sick of seeing the Slack message channels of this thing popping, but we test it very, very rigorously, and against just one machine, right? That we know it very well, so it should be producing the same results every time. The other confidence that I have in sort of the hallucination part is the amount of things that I've learned about the prompting and instructions. I cannot stress as much to all of you how important that is, because there were times when I wasn't being very specific enough, and yes, it was like, whoa, where did you get that, right? So yeah,
How much did it cost?
That's a great question. We're kind of monitoring that at the moment. Right now, with just our usage in May, I think we popped about $5 on AWS costs combined with all that stuff. Wes was talking about the tokens and stuff earlier with being able to access these models. Per call, I think I was seeing about 1,000 tokens going through each call. What's important to note too is you can hook these agents in a way so that they can pass the conversation history to each other. So whatever conversation the supervisor had with the guy who's getting the fleet IDs, he can carry that over to one of the other agents. It opens up this whole new world that hurts my brain. I decided to turn that all off because I knew it was going to inject more text into the token calls. So I said, no. They don't need to know all that other context. I just want them to just do it like they were doing it for the first time every time. I hope that answers your question. Sorry. Okay, great.